The number on your passport is a lie.
Not a metaphor, not a motivational poster, a biological fact, because your cells might be running decades ahead or behind the year you were born, and for the first time in history, we can measure which one it is. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you something that is quietly rewriting preventive medicine in 2026. I'll explain exactly what biological age is and why it predicts your risk of dying far more accurately than the year you were born. I'll show you the accidental discovery that started it all, made by a statistician who was looking for something else entirely. I'll walk you through the most advanced aging clocks and what they actually measure, and why one of them acts less like a clock and more like a speedometer. And I'll show you what a colony of bizarre underground rodents taught scientists about whether the speed of aging is actually fixed. Stay with me until the last section, because the final finding changes everything about what you thought aging actually was. It started with a mistake. In 2010, a UCLA statistician named Steve Horvath was analyzing DNA samples from identical twins. His goal had nothing to do with aging. He was looking for epigenetic markers linked to sexual orientation. He found no signal, but the twins' ages spanned decades. And on a whim, almost as an afterthought, Horvath ran the data against something else: age. Once I looked at the signal for aging, he later said, it blew me away. The correlation was massive, predictable, universal. The chemical tags sitting on the DNA, called methyl groups, were changing with age in a pattern so consistent that an algorithm could read them like a calendar. In 2013, Horvath published what became one of the most cited papers in aging research: a pan-tissue clock, working on virtually any human tissue. Blood, brain, liver, skin, same algorithm, same accuracy. You spit in a cup, and it tells you your age, not the number of years you've been alive. The biological state of your body right now. Chronological age measures time. Biological age measures damage. Think of your DNA as a compact disc. The music, your genetic code, is burned into the disc and doesn't change. But the epigenome is the reader. It controls which tracks play in which cells at which time. And over time, the disc gets scratched. Cells that were supposed to play one set of instructions start playing the wrong ones. Gene expression becomes noisy, disorganized. That disorganization is what we experience as aging. The critical insight: two people born in the same year can have radically different levels of scratch damage. One person's biological clock can be running years ahead of their chronological age, another's years behind. And that gap isn't just cosmetic. It predicts disease, cognitive decline, how long you will live. A higher biological age, regardless of chronological age, consistently predicted earlier death. Scientists at Harvard confirmed this across large population datasets, including the Framingham Heart Study. Not somewhat earlier, meaningfully earlier. Not all biological clocks ask the same question, and this distinction matters. The Horvath clock asks, how old do your cells look? 353 specific methylation sites, accurate to within a few years in most tissues. Then came GrimAge, which asks a different question entirely. Not how old do you look, but how close to death are you? GrimAge was trained directly on mortality data. One standard deviation acceleration predicts significantly higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, and all-cause mortality. It's the difference between asking a doctor your age and asking them how much runway you have left. But the most interesting clock is DunedinPACE. DunedinPACE doesn't measure where you are on the aging curve. It measures how fast you're moving along it. An aging speedometer. It emerged from a study tracking 19 biomarkers across 4 time points over 2 decades in a single birth cohort, distilled into one blood test. The result: one standard deviation faster on DunedinPACE was associated with a 65% increased hazard of mortality. Not from being biologically older, from aging faster, right now, in real time. Now, here's the finding I promised you from last week. Deep underground in East Africa lives a hairless, nearly blind rodent that barely ages. The naked mole rat lives up to 37 years, 10 times longer than a mouse of similar size, and shows almost no signs of age-related disease. When scientists applied epigenetic clocks to their DNA, they found something unexpected. The clocks were ticking. Even in an animal that appears biologically immune to aging, the methylation patterns were changing over time. But here's where it gets remarkable. The queens, the dominant breeding females, were aging epigenetically significantly slower than the other females in the colony. Same genetics, same environment, dramatically different clock speed. The difference wasn't in their DNA sequence, it was in their role, their status, their biology shaped by how they lived. Researchers identified specific gene regions, including pathways linked to pituitary function via the LHX3 transcription factor, that appear to drive this slower aging in queens. The exact mechanism isn't fully understood yet, but the implication is clear. The speed of biological aging is not entirely fixed. Non-genetic factors can move the needle, and just as the queen's social role slows her biological clock, our own epigenetic clocks can be influenced by how we live. Which brings us to the question I know you've been waiting for. Can you actually reverse it? One clinical trial tested exactly this. A group of men between 51 and 65 received a personalized protocol combining human growth hormone, the diabetes drug, metformin, DHEA, vitamin D3, and zinc. Over 12 months, their epigenetic age reversed by an average of 2.5 years relative to expected aging. It was a small study, exploratory, no control group, and the doses were highly individualized, meaning the protocol can't be simply copied. But the signal was there for the first time. Biological aging, measured objectively by an epigenetic clock, reversed its course, and at the frontier, the Sinclair lab at Harvard, 3 specific genes have already reset the biological age of cells in mice. The first human trials are now beginning. One important caveat, and this is worth saying clearly, scientists like Peter Attia note that we don't yet have proof that improving your clock score translates directly into living longer. These clocks are powerful proxies, not yet certainties. The science is moving fast. The caution is warranted. Here's what the current evidence supports, specifically. 1. Fast and restrict calories. These protocols activate sirtuin pathways that directly influence epigenetic maintenance, the biological machinery that keeps your methylation patterns organized. 2. Exercise and build your cardiorespiratory fitness. High VO2 max is associated with up to a 70% reduction in all-cause mortality, not a marginal effect, a dramatic one. 3. Eliminate or dramatically reduce smoking. Smoking directly accelerates DNA methylation in ways that GrimAge specifically detects. It is one of the clock's primary input signals. 4. Protect metabolic health. Managing insulin levels and reducing visceral fat removes 2 of the most consistent drivers of accelerated biological aging. 5. Data shows that approximately 5% of the population naturally ages at a faster biological rate, which correlates with higher mortality risks. Epigenetic testing is now accessible as a consumer product and can tell you where you stand. Here's what I want you to take away. The number on your passport is a count of orbits. Your biological age is a measure of what those orbits did to your cells. Even an underground rodent queen managed to slow that process, not by changing her genes, but through the biology of how she lived. You have more influence over that second number than medicine has ever been able to tell you, until now. If this was useful, subscribe. Every week we translate the latest longevity research into exactly this format. No supplements to sell, no agenda, just the science. Next week, in the first 30 minutes after you wake up, your body sets its metabolic tone for the entire day, whether it burns fat or stores it. And most people are unknowingly switching it in the wrong direction before they even have breakfast. See you then.